Hi, everybody. With our Happy Minds Stories series, I share the inspirational stories of people who have suffered with mental illness or mental health issues and have successfully learned to live with this and go on to thrive and are now helping others to do the same. In today's Happy Minds story, I have the pleasure of speaking with Anu Verma. Anu is a victim of trauma, a certified complex trauma recovery coach and therapist. She's also the founder of victim2victor.net, where through her website and podcast, she aims to empower and inspire survivors, showing them that healing from sexual and domestic abuse is possible and works with people. And she also works with people to overcome emotional pain and trauma to live a more fulfilling and healthy life. Anu is also the author of Victim to Victor, a true story of pain, abuse, healing, self-exploration, and growth. Anu, thank you so much for taking part in the Happy Mind Stories series. So how are you going today?
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on this happy summit. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Very good. So, well, let's get started, and perhaps you can introduce yourself to the audience and talk a little bit about your personal history and what has led you to Victor or Victim to Victor.
Okay. So I guess it all boils down to my own personal history of childhood trauma, where I experienced sexual abuse from a very young age of just 3. And it kind of got blocked in my mind for about 3 decades of my life. I never even had any memories of it. And it was only in kind of recent events where I started getting flashbacks with my partners, and they were very disturbing flashbacks. And it was only from that I learned about PTSD, and this was actually a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. And yeah, it's just been a real traumatic yet very nourishing healing journey that I've been on for about a decade. And I've had many different like healing procedures. I've experienced so much in terms of like Reiki healing and emotional freedom therapy, hypnotherapy, and I think the most kind of awakening time for me was actually Tony Robbins' teachings, where just by attending his seminars and just going through all of his kind of life and wealth mastery programs, it really helped me to understand myself better, and to understand about limiting beliefs and how they hold you back, and to understand how whatever has happened in our childhood actually shapes us as an adult. And I was able to then understand, what my needs were as well, what needs motivate every decision that I make, and to kind of look at the values that I have in life, and, what is important to me. And it wasn't only just being aware of that, but I was also able to change that. Like, for example, I was very much focused on significance, thinking that I had to look important to people in order to be accepted and in order for me to feel fulfilled. But then that wasn't making me happy. I was very unfulfilled, by having, money and having the fancy car that I had and owning properties. I was depressed. I may have looked successful to the outside world, but I was internally very depressed. And that's when I realized that it's not significance that is my need. My need is love and connection and contribution. And it was only when I started to contribute more of my time to help others, and not only money, because I used to just throw money about to charity thinking that that was me giving back. But the real giving back is when you actually dedicate your time to help others. And I felt this amazing fulfillment that I've never really felt before. And a lot of this was done through charity work, where I was working with domestic violence survivors. And that's when I started to really heal and to really understand what my purpose in life was. And that's when I started to write. Writing really helped me to heal as well. And that on the back end of that was obviously released in my book. But then even when I released my book, I realized that I was still feeling very suppressed. I still hadn't healed fully. And that's because I was shut down a lot as a child. I wasn't able to really express myself vocally. So that was a big wake up call for me. And then it was only when another podcaster friend of mine actually told me to start a podcast. I was like, I can't start a podcast. Can't even talk about what happened to me. Yeah, I wrote my whole story, but that was like me hiding behind my words. I can't be out there in the public talking to people. What will I say? And I remember just again, because I've the book where it says feel the fear and do it anyway. That's always been my motto in life, and I did it. I sat in our box room and I started to record my first episode, and it was very scripted. I remember writing scripts. I was literally just reading off scripts, and I thought, you know what, this is better than nothing. I'm just going to publish it. And I started getting downloads. I was like, oh wow, people are actually listening. It's like, what? They're actually listening to my scripts. And then honestly, just one thing led to another. And, I started to really think about the content. And then I started getting like people who wanted to come on my show and be my guest. And then, that's when I started my podcast. And wow, to me, again, that was healing as well, because it was me just talking more about it and to really start to get vocal and to open up the block chakra, the throat block chakra that I've had all my life. So yeah, it's just been a crazy journey, to be honest. And I always say to people is that every day you're healing. You can't just have healed and that's it. Every day we're healing, and we have to really embrace that and really accept the changes that we go through. Because yeah, life is beautiful, and I would never have known that if I'd had stayed in that trauma and PTSD state that I was in. So yeah.
Very good. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of people like yourself who in their childhood have experienced something, and then they may have, like yourself, kind of like blocked off that part of themselves, but obviously it's gone on to shape them. So
Mm.
how did you come to the realization that you were in PTSD kind of like state? What helped you kind of identify this is where you were, and that there was things in your childhood that led you to being there? So what was kind of like a pivotal moment for you?
Yeah, and I talk about this in my book. It was actually my first therapist who I ever saw in my entire life. And it was just talking things with her. She really helped to clarify what was going on in me. And she did a lot of healing work with me. So we did some Reiki, and I just remember in all of our sessions, I was just crying because I had so much pain trapped inside my body that was releasing consistently. And we did past life regression work and tapping, which is the emotional freedom therapy work. And every time I'd be going back with different problems and different things to resolve. But all of this was a consequence of what had happened to me when I was younger. And it wasn't just like, oh, wow, okay, I understand that now. It's been such a long journey of understanding how it all links together. And it's only recently that, Gabor Mate has actually released his books about, the body keeps the score. It's the fact that, oh no, that wasn't actually Gabor, that was Bezel. Sorry, yeah, he wrote that one. But all these trauma experts now who are just out there talking about how we keep trauma in our body, and it comes out in different physical ailments. And trauma is the cause of cancer. Trauma is the cause of all these other chronic diseases that we suffer from. I just feel like trauma is huge, and that's what's motivated me to want to study more in it, and to become a traumatologist and to help more people through my practice, and which I am already doing through my podcast and my book. But yeah, I want to continue this journey now of
Very
healing
good.
others. Mm.
So part of your healing journey was obviously working with the therapist. So what other things did you do beyond the therapist in your day to day to kind of like help you deal with the experience you went through?
Yeah, a lot of my journey from that was actually learning. So I was learning a lot about therapy, about spirituality, and just really getting absorbed in like retreats. So I'd go on retreats and meditate because I know I couldn't meditate because I'd just get so lost in my thoughts. So what I did was try to just go away from home and just get absorbed in like this amazing like retreat place that I'd go to. And it was all like in nature. A lot of it is because, again, by connecting in nature, that is huge when it comes to healing. That's something we should aim to do every day anyway. And so I was doing all these amazing things, like getting qualified in yoga, getting qualified as a hypnotherapist. And I did my Reiki training as well, my level 1, level 2, and then I became a Reiki master. So, and it was all just amazing for me to understand more about myself and to be able to help others as well. And like my kind of most recent healing was with Tony Robbins, like just by getting immersed into his programs really helped me as well. And there's a reason why he's like, number one when it comes to personal development because his, his programs really do work. So,
Very good. So with dealing with traumas, so you've indicated there's a lot of things you're doing and you continue to do. Part of that is kind of like learning more about things and
mm,
developing new kind of like I guess approaches to living and new kind of like tools and techniques you can use to kind of like help you kind of like get better. So do you need to go back to what you experienced? Like if you have had trauma, do you need to go back and address that to kind of like heal? Is that part of the journey you went through? Or are you able just
mm.
to kind of move forward, or do you really need to kind of like address that?
Very good question. Yeah. And in terms of my therapy practice, I do actually offer that. And it's a lot of it is where, we're talking about the event and the clients actually talk about the event over quite a few different sessions. And the aim is to normalize it so that, the client can take away the learning from that event and so that it doesn't actually distress them any longer. So that is quite a big strategy when it comes to trauma healing, which I offer, and it's been evidence based as well that it works. But a lot of my healing was actually through inner child work. So I was actually talking to my inner child, and that would be through the therapy practices that I had. And it's just to talk to the inner child to make her understand that it wasn't her fault what happened to her, because a lot of the shame and guilt that we carry from childhood is the thing that really does kill us. Shame and guilt is huge, when it comes to trauma. And so it's important to go back to that time just to make your inner child understand that, it wasn't your fault and that, whatever happened, you didn't deserve that. I just think, just speaking to your inner child is so important. And yeah, that worked for me. So
So, for someone who hasn't had that experience of talking to their inner child, what is the process you do go through to kind of like be able to communicate to your inner child?
a lot of it is done through like a meditative state where we have like the therapist who will talk to us and will I guess it's a bit like going into like a hypnotic state. And the therapist will ask you questions about where are you now, and they'll take you back to the event, so you have to talk about the event, and then they'll ask you to step away from that child so that you have your adult self there. So the child is there and the adult self is there, and then they'll ask you to like actually make up a dialogue between the adult and the little child, and the adult will ask the little child, how are you feeling, and what's going on right now. And then the child, a lot of the times, it can bring up a lot of pent up emotions. So it can be a very life changing experience just doing that. And it is amazing work, to be honest. I know there's a lot out there at the moment on YouTube and stuff, so if anybody wants to find out about it, then yeah, go on YouTube, or actually find a therapist who does that kind of work.
Very good.
Mm.
And so, what you kind of like indicated that through this process, it's kind of transformational. So
Mm.
how did you feel personally, like before and after? Like, you've kind of indicated, and then part of the summit, which the story section is part of, talks a lot about somatic experiences and how it's
Mm.
everything's kind of like held in the body. So
Mm.
how was the shift for you? So you obviously went in feeling a particular kind of way, and
Mm.
then we can kind of like imagine there's some kind of a release,
Mm.
being able to express your emotions because you've kind of like held them in. And then I guess with guilt and
Mm.
shame, you also you blame yourself, so you don't want to feel
Exactly.
because you're kind of like holding it against yourself. And then there's that moment afterwards. So what does this kind of like transition feel like?
Wow, yeah, God, yeah, taking me back now. It's like, yeah, wow. So I do remember a lot of tears. So there was a lot of release, a lot of crying, and because a lot of that was actually stored, in my gut. Because you do a lot of the trauma that we have is actually stored in the gut. And I feel like this is why now somatic experiencing and embodiment are really important tools for us, because we forget to move. So just by moving allows us to release, whatever might be trapped in the gut, and a lot of that is actually bloatedness as well. So yeah, so embodiment coaching is fantastic for that. But in terms of actually my own physical experience, yeah, I feel like crying is what I had to do, because just by crying just loosened me up, because I was just so tense all my life. And I remember I used to have real bad circulation as well, when my hands and my feet were really cold. And again, that's all down to blocks. They were just all my chakras were blocked. I remember even my healer said, she actually did a chakra test on me. And she was like, most of your channels are blocked. And that was all down to just, my ego needed to defend me and to protect myself so that I wouldn't be hurt again. So you do feel that in inner child work, you feel that release, and you feel like kind of a weight's been lifted off your shoulders, and that you can actually move again without being tense.
Very
So
good.
it is a magical, yeah.
So so once you've gone through this transformation and you've kind of like I guess confronted the fact that you've gone through this particular experience, you've in your case talked to your inner child and kind of like comforted them. So
Mm.
what's the work you need to do to keep yourself moving? Because as you said, like you
Mm.
once you've experienced trauma, you're not all completely healed from it. You kind of keep on
Mm.
needing to work to kind of like keep moving forward. So what do we need to do if we have had
Mm.
that experience in the past?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess a lot of it is down to awareness. You need to I shouldn't say need to, I'm saying it would be good if we learn to tune into ourselves, and we're aware of, any pain or any, you know, emotions or feelings that might come into us. Just being aware of, okay, so let me just think about, okay, so I'm feeling really stressed out today. I wonder why that is. Why is that? Why do I feel stressed? What is the trigger? And does this relate to anything that might have happened in the past? Because a lot of the times a lot of the things that we experience now is linked to previous events and previous situations that we might have been in. And just having that awareness can really change, your whole approach, and it could really shift your mindset from being in that victim state to actually being more victorious about it. And, when it comes to healing, yeah, I always say that healing is a continuous journey because, okay, so I might have processed my childhood trauma. So how about my most recent relationships? Why did they fail? Okay, so maybe I've got some work to do on my relationship skills and boundaries and trust. Okay, so maybe I need to work on that. And then, okay, when I look at my professional life, why am I feeling unfulfilled right now? What might be the cause of that? Okay, let's reflect and see if it's something that I really want to be doing still, and why am I still in this if it's not fulfilling me? Is this like a pattern that I see? See what I mean? So you're kind of like looking at all aspects of your life as you go along life and just working on it. Like with me, I'm a big believer of hiring like mentors, coaches, and therapists. People who have maybe been in the path that you want to pursue in, so that you can also learn from them and be guided by them, and have accountability. I know we were mentioning about personal training before this, and for me, that's been huge having that personal trainer, because I feel so accountable to her, to actually do the exercise correctly, in the correct form, and to actually do the reps that I'm meant to be doing and not procrastinate. So accountability is huge.
Very good. So it sounds like, and I think I'm a firm believer in this, it's like an ongoing journey. So like
Mm.
basically the fact is you've got traumas, big or small, that have occurred throughout life. They've created patterns, and there's certain triggers that will help you or bring you back to remembering those kind of things, which may put you in a different pattern than you perhaps would want to be able to show up in life. And then so you need to always have that curiosity to keep on questioning, why you're doing things, and not assume that's a default setting, because I guess a lot of us kind of like believe that we have this default setting as who we are, and then there's nothing that can change, but rather the reason we are who we are is because of all these past events, and they could be
Mm.
influencing how we show up. And if we were aware, using some of the different modalities, using therapists and other kind of like healing kind of like practices, we may be able to shift that and actually show up quite different to how we currently show up. Would that be a correct kind of like summary?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Spot on, spot on. And plus, like, yeah, you're right. When it comes to, childhood trauma, then if you think about the amount of years that we might have suppressed what had happened to us, or just blocked out, because a lot of the time when something bad happens to us, we might just block it out. It'll just go out of our memory. And that's due to, be like you're protecting yourself. And then it comes out, when you least expect it, it'll come out through maybe, you might get cancer, or, it might come out where it really messes up a relationship, because you decide that you can't trust anybody. And so, you decide to check your partner's phone when they're not watching because you just don't trust them. And just little things like that. And again, this is from personal experience. And this is why I can speak openly about this, because this happened to me. I never realized that my trauma was impacting so many aspects of my life. I was addicted to work. I was working 70, 80-hour weeks, and I was like a robot. It was just automated. I was not even aware of how I was feeling, how tired I was. Food, I had no taste for food either, because again, you lose senses, you lose that awareness. So I was just eating the most awfulest foods, like the most tasteless foods. I remember my sister-in-law pointed out, she's like, "Oh my God, Anu, you're eating chickpeas and tuna, it's like mixing it up from the can. Ugh, it's not tasty." But I was eating it because I was thinking, oh wow, I don't even know what this tastes like, but I'm just eating it. It's just, yeah. So little things like that, that's what trauma causes. it's just phenomenal. The kind of, when you reflect back in your life and you think, wow, I was really, I don't like to use the word damaged, but yeah, I was damaged. Like that what happened to me had really affected me. And I know, I can laugh about it and now because again, it's like I wouldn't be where I am today if that hadn't happened to me. I wouldn't have so much strength and resilience that I have now if I hadn't gone through that. So I'm very grateful, to be honest. I'm very grateful to be on the journey that I'm on.
Very good. So no, like you kind of like highlighted a number of things. So like, I think your number one point there is that we all need to cultivate some kind of awareness and be questioning ourselves about how we're kind of like currently showing up in life to kind of understand if number one, this is the way we want to be showing up. Number two, is there more that we could be actually doing? Is there more we could to experience kind of life? And then that may highlight for ourselves that certain things in our past have kind of influenced where we are now. And it's certainly worth kind of like investigating and having that curiosity to learn a little bit more.
Mm,
So you kind of like mentioned, which is kind of like quite positive, is that now you're able to look at the experience you've had and actually view it as, I guess, like a blessing or something that because it shaped who you are. So perhaps you can
mm,
talk a little bit more because I guess what you're indicating here is that post-traumatic kind of like growth opportunity. And I think that's kind of like a good sense of hope for a number of people who may feel like they're damaged, like you said, or they've been overly affected by the past. And then you've indicated, well, actually, yes, it's happened, but
mm.
there's been some good things that have come out of this for myself. So perhaps you can talk about how you came to that kind of, you know, decision or like awareness that, you know, looking at this cruddy, but look at what I've and what I've got now. So
Mm.
how do we go through that kind of transition?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is down to your own practice. Like with me, my gratitude practice in the mornings has really helped that and really shaped that idea because even when I was going through my healing journey, there was just like so I had so many emotions come up of, just questioning, why did this happen to me and why am I still hurting and why are bad things still happening to me? Because even when I was going through that journey, I sort of still in like very abusive relationships and I realized that after that I still hadn't learned my lesson that I was still attracting, the wrong people into my life. And so even and this was even when I was seeing my therapist, because this is what I said. There was new things always coming up, like emotional abuse that was just horrible. Being controlled and then being deceived financially and then being cheated on. All these things were happening as I was trying to heal. So, it was only, oh God, yeah, it was literally the point when I went to my first. Like I keep mentioning him because but when I went to my first Tony Robbins event, that was like my pinnacle point of where things started to shift. I was no longer attracting the wrong people into my life. And I basically distanced myself from the toxic people who were, really dampening me and, really taking away my energy. So just by having that distance from these people, it really helped and it really gave me that space to grow from. And I think that was when I started to realize, wow, this is what growth is now. I'm actually finally growing as a human being, and I'm actually really starting to invest in myself. So yeah, it was actually that was in 2017. So I guess it wasn't that even long ago, was it? When you think about it, 2017.
No, so it sounds like once you have created that awareness and then you're able to create a little bit more space for yourself because now
Yeah.
you understand the things that perhaps holding you back, you've had an opportunity to kind of really invest in yourself. Perhaps before you always kind of like fighting fires and
Mm,
dealing with past patterns as opposed to really being able to see what you really needed.
yeah.
So did you have a career change along the way? Because you're indicating
Mm,
you used to be quite driven with work and you're
God,
like working 70, 80 hour kind of like weeks, and
yeah.
then and currently you're working more in the trauma field, I kind of like believe. So
Yeah.
what was that transition? Was that about that 2017 kind of period as well?
It actually was actually that was a time when I had my first child as well. So yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's why for me that was a transition because I never wanted a child. I think I was so troubled within myself that I just thought, oh my God, I can't bring a child into this world. My child would be lost as I am, because I'm safe right now, you know. So so I just feel like, yeah, that was a pinnacle point in my life when I actually discovered, oh, I don't need to be putting in the hours because it wasn't just one job I was working. I was working two full-time. Well, okay, so I had my day job, which was in, I've always been in sales. I love sales. But then I had my evening and weekend business in tutoring as well that I was doing. Yeah, I was bringing in the bucks because, I was making loads of money. But again, I had to put in the hours. So it was kind of, I was actually investing my time for money. But then, yeah, by the time 2017 came and, I got pregnant, I was like, I don't need to be putting in the hours anymore. I can't because I've got to be a mom now. So I stopped my business, my tutoring business, and I just focused on my day job. I even give up my day job, to be honest, just to be a full-time mom. I didn't quite enjoy that because that was literally like me going from, hardcore work ethic to literally just being a mom. That depressed me, I must admit. So I was like, right, okay, so I need a bit of a balance here. I need a middle field. And then I finally found it. So yeah, really grateful that I was able to find it. And I started to appreciate life more and to just enjoy life more, and not just be stuck in that trauma state of just, being a robot. I call myself a robot because when I reflect back, I was a robot. I'm enjoying my relationships a lot more now. Just, being a lot more present in my relationships, which I wasn't before because I didn't have the right people in my life. But now I'm able to do that. I don't have many people in my life now, but the ones that I do have are very important to me. And they might not even live in the close kind of proximity that I live. They live quite far away, but that's because I've traveled so much and lived everywhere that I've created loads of friends everywhere. So yeah, it's interesting how life evolves and how you change as a being. But I think a lot of this is maturity as well. I feel like we mature anyway as we get older. So
Yeah, no, definitely. But I guess, the important thing you kind of like indicated is that um, if you don't get rid of these kind of like blockages, you're not able to kind of like really kind of like show up and evolve. And
mm,
so really kind of like, go from robot to actually being a human being.
yeah.
I mean, I would admit that I'm a bit of a robot or have been a bit of a robot as well. And then, like we can survive, but
Mm,
there's a difference between surviving and thriving. And I think,
mm,
you do have to get rid of these kind of like blockages to kind of like really show up in life and really kind of like understand, what
yeah.
life kind of like holds for you. So
Mm,
no, I think what you've said is kind of like quite powerful for people. So it doesn't matter what age you are, you know, if you feel like you are a robot,
mm,
do have some curiosity and ask some questions because I guess you're a very good poster child for what is possible if
mm,
you kind of like get through all of the things that may be holding you back.
mm,
So what piece of advice would you give to your younger self? Like, because I guess
mm,
part of us as adults and then also being parents,
yeah.
the fact is everyone's going to have experiences which could be traumatic, and then we can't kind of like we'd like to wrap our children up in cotton wool, but we don't want to wait 3 decades to kind of heal ourselves or have them,
Mm.
kind of like have to heal themselves. So what advice would have you given to yourself, and what advice would you give to someone younger,
Mm.
perhaps like you did when you were talking to your younger child? What
Mm.
advice would you give them?
I guess it would have been to talk about it more. Even if you hadn't found anyone, I guess it's just knowing that it wasn't your fault, and to not blame yourself. It's hard though. It's really hard to say it because obviously when you're young, you don't understand that. But if you do have anyone like a confidant, anyone who you trust, who you can open up to, please do open up, because the worst thing we do is hold it in. That is what kills us. That is the trauma. That is the stress, and the number one killer is holding it in. So yeah.
Very good. And do you have any other kind of advice you would give to anyone else now who's, I guess, a little bit closer to our ages? Perhaps not mine because I'm probably a little bit older, but but what advice would you give to anyone else who has had these experiences in life? What would you like to say to them?
To find your community. Just there's so much out there now on Facebook, so many groups. You can join my group, which is Victim to Victor on Facebook. Just find your community, man. Just talk about it. Talk about what happened. Get a mentor, get a therapist, and just start to really open up, because vulnerability is strength. And I know we live in this social media world where, people are just saying, yeah, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever. And they're scared to be vulnerable. They're scared of showing their true self. Whereas that is where it's at. That is the pinnacle of, where we need to be in our life. It's to actually be authentic. It's to actually be honest with ourselves and to open up and to talk about it. Find your community. Yeah, just I think a lot of the time as well, when you're in that trauma state, you don't trust many people, which is why I feel like these safe groups are really important to have. So yeah.
Very good. And what message of hope would you like to give people who have gone through an experience similar to yours, and then people in general, I guess, because big trauma, small trauma doesn't really matter. It has an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does, absolutely. I guess I just want you all to know that healing is possible, and you don't need to remain the victim anymore, and that there is so much out there now to help you live a better life and to be fulfilled and to actually enjoy your life. You don't need to be in that state, whether it's anxiety or depression, or whether you're just feeling low. You don't need to feel that way anymore. Yeah.
Awesome. So, well, let's finish up now. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about the work you're currently doing. You've mentioned your podcast and
Mm.
your book, but perhaps you can talk a little bit about Victim to Victor, what that is all about, what you're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, sure. So, by all means, please do have a look at my podcast and my book, and go on social media. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and please do connect with me. So, my main work now is actually as a trauma therapist and a trauma recovery coach. And, I would love to work with you if you're looking to heal from your trauma, or if you're looking for that post-traumatic growth and to, look at all areas of your life, like I mentioned, because trauma does affect all aspects of your life. So, if you are looking for a trauma recovery coach, then, please do get in touch. And yeah, like in terms of podcasting, I stopped doing it when I had my second child, but I am looking to get back into it this summer. So I am looking forward to getting more episodes out there. So, and again, if you do want to be a guest on my podcast, then please do get in touch. Always looking
Very,
for guests.
very good. Well, Anu, thank you so much. It's certainly been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
we've left people with this message of hope that healing is possible, and also that they definitely should not feel shame or guilt for what they've experienced in the past, and
Mm.
that they do need to deal with what they have if they intend to kind of like move forward. So,
Yeah.
well, let's help people find you online. So perhaps you can kind of give your website name and then also your socials.
Yeah, sure. So it's literally victimtovictor.net is my website. And you'll find me on the socials just type in victim to victor. Oh, and by the way, it is with a number two. So yeah, it's a number two. And if you want to email me, I'm at Anu, which is ANU at victimtovictor.net as well.
Awesome. Anu, thank you so much for sharing your happy mind story.
Thank you. It's been an honor.